Hey, let's do it for the content. Megaran. Let's go. Let's get it. Dick Kick City. It gets gritty when Megaran come through. The kid gets busy. Work yourself into a shoot, but you know it's legit. Like what you like, just don't be a dick. Hey, wrestling with regret. Let's get it. Yeah. What's that set? Maybe you should bottle it. Drink it and spray it on. Get Claude to model it. 8 years in, can't look back. Who else can make the law sweatsuits look whack? Wrestling with regret. Let's get it. Yeah.
In an era full of guys like Bad Bunny, Pat McAfee, Logan Paul, and Action Bronson, celebrities getting in the world of professional wrestling is such a huge part of today's scene, it's hard to imagine a time when it was ever considered novel. From promoting their latest projects to chasing a dream, we've seen all sorts of musicians, actors, pro athletes, late-night talk show hosts, even future political juggernauts jump on the wrestling bandwagon over the decades. While the WWF went all out with celebrity involvement during the Rock and Wrestling connection, leading to the first WrestleMania, they were far from the first ones to incorporate outsiders into major storylines. Just like with a lot of things in wrestling, Memphis did it first. Ah yes, Memphis, land of the Lawlers, Jackie Fargo, the Jarretts, the Dundees, the Poffos, and many more of the industry's absolute legends. This territory never met a risk it wouldn't take, no matter how far it ran counter to what traditional wrestling was like at the time. So it should come as no surprise that Memphis was ground zero for one of the first and most influential celebrity angles in professional wrestling history. Andy Kaufman's considered one of the all-time comedic legends in America. He made his name on the stand-up scenes in New York and Los Angeles during the 70s, simultaneously busting up and bewildering crowds with his subversive brand of humor. What made Kaufman so brilliant was his ability to take the traditional stand-up fare of the time and turn it upside down, leading fans to watch and question if what they were witnessing was really happening. Where have I seen that before? In 1978, Andy got his big break as Latka Gravis on the sitcom Taxi. The show, which ran for 5 seasons, made Kaufman a household name, but he grew bored and frustrated by the creative constraints the show placed on him. In the final years of his life, Andy put his Hollywood career on the line to pursue his passion for the graps, and in doing so, changed wrestling forever. This week we're looking at Andy Kaufman's short but legendary career in the squared circle. Growing up just outside of New York City, Andy was completely obsessed with professional wrestling, in particular the heels he saw in the old WWF territory like Nature Boy Buddy Rogers and Classy Freddie Blassie. Though Kaufman lacked the physical traits necessary to make it as a grappler himself, he cooked up an ingenious way of integrating pro wrestling into his comedy act. Now, Andy's entire career was built on defying audience expectations, whether it was showing up on the Midnight Special performing a song with only 3 words,
I trusted you, I trusted you, I trusted you, trusted you, I trusted ah!
to eating ice cream on stage as his audience watched with increasing impatience. Or reading from The Great Gatsby as the crowd begged for a single Latka impression.
Let's keep it down, please, because you know we have a long way to go.
But Kaufman began taking things even further, aping traditional wrestling heel mannerisms that went beyond the limits of stand-up. It was perhaps one of the earliest examples of trolling in mainstream popular culture.
Let me tell you something, just shut up. Why don't you, instead of loud-mouthing off, come on the stage and tell me.
Andy had embraced the persona of a chauvinist who, as part of his stand-up comedy act, would talk down to women and claim they were only good for cooking, cleaning, and making babies. To back up his words, he would challenge women in the audience to wrestle him on the spot, offering cash prizes and sometimes even his own hand in marriage should he lose. Sometimes the women were plants who agreed to lose beforehand. Sometimes they fought Andy for real. But no matter who it was, Kaufman was able to pin them all, and in a lot of cases have a different kind of rematch with them in the hotel afterward.
Real man of genius.
Despite the fun Andy was having both during and after his performances, it rubbed a lot of audience members the wrong way, destroying a lot of the goodwill he had built during his time on Taxi and Saturday Night Live. Thus, it was time to take the act in front of a crowd that might be a little more receptive to it. He first approached Vince McMahon Sr., who apparently gave the idea enough thought to allow Kaufman to appear once on WWF television.
Day tonight, I'd swam the Cuban with the sharks and the jellyfish.
but she can't. She's afraid to take a man in a wrestling match.
Eddie, the best of luck to you against Diane and Ed or whomever it may be.
But fearing that an actor's involvement might expose his business of also actors, Vince Sr. rejected Andy's request to wrestle women at Madison Square Garden. Luckily, a friendship with an Apter mag writer named Bill Apter led Andy to his eventual wrestling home.
I'm going to send you back to the kitchen where you belong. I'm going to have you scrubbing the potatoes and washing the carrots.
Memphis icon Jerry the King Lawler recognized the value of bringing the star of a hit sitcom into his promotion. And after a frenzied 3 a.m. phone call between them, he jumped at the chance to bring Andy into the territory. After about a month of wrestling matches where Andy, the self-proclaimed intergender wrestling champion of the world, put up his hair or offered marriage to any woman who could beat him, Lawler was impressed by the heat Kaufman was getting and wanted to transfer that buzz to a larger program. By which I mean to him. One night as Andy was fighting with local wrestler Foxy Jackson, Lawler, champion of women everywhere, intervened and challenged Kaufman to wrestle a man for once. Phase 1 of Lawler and Kaufman's master plan was complete. On to Phase 2, the promos.
You want to wrestle me? You want to wrestle me Memphis style?
I am a national television star, and I want the respect that I deserve when I come down to Memphis.
Andy, I think you really hurt her.
Doesn't matter. She doesn't have any money. She's poor. She can't sue me. Is that how you talk to Memphis style, Mr. Lawler? Boo.
As someone who grew up watching and rewatching the I'm From Hollywood documentary when it aired in reruns on Comedy Central, I loved watching these heel-tastic promos from Kaufman. I mean, they're timeless. Playing up the Hollywood star persona to its logical extreme, Andy spent weeks running down Lawler and the good people of Memphis, flaunting his wealth and social status, all while bragging that he was going to wipe the floor with the king. Adding to the humor was Kaufman's friend, writer, and frequent co-conspirator Bob Zamuda playing his lawyer. As the kids would say today, Andy understood the assignment.
He jumped in the ring, he hit you. It's just as much if a spectator jumped in that ring and hit you over the head.
The big showdown finally took place at the Mid-South Coliseum on April 5th, 1982. Once the bell rang, Andy proved he was indeed a student of the game by doing the stall job of all Memphis stall jobs, fleeing repeatedly from Lawler until the king lured him in with the promise of a free headlock. Kaufman's bravado finally got the best of him as Lawler destroyed him with a back suplex and not one, but 2 devastating pile drivers to give Andy the DQ win. Why the disqualification? Well, at the time, the pile driver was illegal in Tennessee, despite it being the finishing move of one of the area's most popular stars. Figure that shit out, kids.
And they are about to get him on the stretcher.
Kaufman agreed to pay for the ambulance that carried him away when Lawler initially balked at the idea, classic promoter stance, then allowed himself to be laid up in the hospital for 3 days. He even wore a neck brace for several months whenever he was in public to sell the beating, which the Taxi showrunners didn't care too much for once the cameras had to roll. Andy's deep dedication to kayfabe was so convincing that promoters around the country, including Bill Watts, sent Lawler and Jerry Jarrett letters of congratulations for shutting Kaufman up.
I always knew that Bill Watts was a damn mark. One night at Lafayette, I was stretching this kid in the ring because he didn't shake my hand backstage. Cowboy gives me a bonus because he thought the guy was John Ritter. I didn't say nothing.
Well, Hoss, I bet you don't have too many nice things to say about Watts after what happened with him and the Mauve all those years ago. Oh, God, I'm so sorry. That was way too soon. I really apologize, man. If anyone in Andy's circle was hopeful that the match with Lawler would be the end of it, boy howdy were they wrong, as Kaufman and the King went to New York City to make a little television history.
It's not a joke.
Well, it wasn't a joke to me.
Did you laugh after when you were laying in the hospital? Was it a joke then?
No, it wasn't.
July 28, 1982, Late Night with David Letterman. Kaufman was one of Letterman's most frequent and beloved guests over the years, so it made sense for he and Jerry to make an appearance several months after their match to presumably hash out their differences. Apparently the original plan was for the two to bury the hatchet on TV, but Kaufman wasn't ready for the angle to be over quite yet. What were they to do? It's a slap that still stands as a legendary moment for wrestling, late night, and TV itself. As their banter escalated, Kaufman and Lawler called an audible in the moment, which led to the King hauling off on the comedian. Kaufman would come back and go on a profanity-laden tirade and even throw coffee in Lawler's face. After a couple of beats, Letterman uttered the classic reply,
I think you can use some of those words on TV. I'm not... But what you can't do is throw coffee. I've said it over and over again.
While Lawler and Jarrett were no doubt jumping jumping for joy that their regional wrestling promotion was getting national attention, the entertainment world was aghast at Andy's apparent mental breakdown, and his career was impacted. Many of Andy's fans, most of whom first saw him on Saturday Night Live, had had enough of his foray into wrestling, and the hippest audience in television sealed his fate when they voted him off the show that November.
Sorry, Andy, you'll never be on Saturday Night Live again!
As time went on, Andy's once popular appearances on college campuses were being canceled. Taxi was also near the end of its run on ABC before getting one final year on NBC. His movie projects, including one based on the fictitious life story of his lounge singer character Tony Clifton, were given the hook. He'd even performed on Broadway with the show T-Neck Tansy, a play about wrestling co-starring Debbie Harry of the band Blondie, but it was shuttered after just one performance. But despite all those options drying up, Kaufman continued to crave the reaction from the Memphis faithful. In the spring of 1983, on a night when Lawler was fighting Nick Bockwinkel for the AWA World title, a man disguised as what they had called a mummy, though really was more the Invisible Man, went ahead and cost Lawler the match. Everyone believed that it was Jimmy Hart in disguise, when in reality it was Kaufman, back for revenge, who had now placed a $5,000 bounty on Lawler.
And I'll tell you, I'm not going to stop now. I won't stop until I find someone who's going to put Jerry Lawler into the hospital just like he did me.
The next few months saw Kaufman take on the King in a series of handicap matches with a variety of heavies. Here we see him in a piledriver handicap match alongside a big dude in a mask called the Colossus of Death. Man, are we sure Lawler has never done drugs? By early July, the partnership between Kaufman and Hart had seemingly disintegrated. It looked as though the Hollywood star had seen the light, offering Lawler 10,000 smackers to team up with him against Jimmy and the Assassin.
If you'd please be in my corner, I will gladly pay you this $10,000.
He promises never to wrestle again. That's enough for me. You keep your money. I'll go down to the ring with you.
The stage was set for the Coliseum on July 18th, but Lawler's passion for ridding Memphis of Hart blinded him to a betrayal so obvious even Sting could have seen it coming. Kaufman proclaimed himself the new king of Memphis, but his glory was short-lived.
Kaufman, Lawler got the fire right at him.
Ouch, that had to hurt worse than the reviews for Heart Beeps. Despite his charred flesh, Andy responded by sending in even more pre-taped interview segments, now with important hygiene tips.
I know that you probably don't know what this is. You haven't ever seen one of these before, but it is called soap. Wash the soap, rub it on your hands, and rub it around, and your hands will get clean.
Man, 40 years later, and some fans apparently still haven't learned. By November of '83, Kaufman was literally phoning it in on the weekly shows. If there was ever going to be a blow-off to this program, it was well past the point of its peak, but that didn't stop them from having a ludicrously booked wrestler versus manager and boxer handicap match. Man, how do you cut promos with boxing gloves on? Thanks to lots of chicanery, the Kaufman-Hart connection finally bested Jerry Lawler in the middle of the ring. The First Family had a whole dang party to celebrate in the next show, which also featured Kaufman doing color commentary. By this point, he was almost halfway through the list.
You are the worst announcer I have ever seen.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, you're welcome.
At least I'm working.
Damn, even Lance Russell couldn't hold back the shade.
Well, we're back on the Jerry Lawler Show, and we don't want to waste any time because I've got some things I want to say to this guy.
The November 20th, 1983 episode of the Jerry Lawler Show would end up being one of Andy's final appearances on Memphis television. Looking haggard and disheveled, it seemed as though Andy wasn't at his best.
And let me tell you something else, Lawler. Let me just tell you something else.
One night later, the two would have the final match of their 19-month feud, a boxing match that saw only one man actually wearing gloves.
Oh, I'm the king. Oh, I'm the king. I'm the new king of Memphis, Tennessee.
After a gobsmacking amount of stalling and shtick, Lawler avoided the dreaded windmill and hit a suplex and a fist drop. The King won the match, and the feud was finally over. Considering how long this program went, I wouldn't have been surprised if Kaufman would have wanted to stay in Memphis forever. Unfortunately, that was not meant to be. After Lawler and others expressed concern for Andy's health, the actor soon received a grim diagnosis, a rare form of terminal lung cancer. Andy's health was only addressed once on Memphis TV, when Jimmy Hart offered sympathy to his friend in front of an uncaring audience.
A very close and personal friend of mine, Andy Kaufman, is dying of cancer. I know you laugh about it. Go ahead, you laugh. You people are sick.
Jesus, forget getting stabbed or having piss thrown at you. That's heat.
Because of the pile driver, Lawler, you gave Andy Kaufman cancer and he is dying, baby, and that is the fact.
Wow. I'm sorry. That's an insane thing to say. Andy Kaufman's life ended at just 35 years of age on May 16, 1984, about 2 years after his first match with Lawler. To this day, there are some who believe that Kaufman's death was a grand hoax and are waiting for him to finally return and deliver the punchline. At this point, I wonder which is more likely, that Kaufman may one day come back, or that Ric Flair has actually wrestled his last match. On the following episode of Memphis Television, Lawler was asked to speak on Andy's death, and, staying true to the storyline, had nothing nice to say about him.
I always thought that when somebody dies, you talk to somebody that thought a lot of him. I hope that if I die, they don't interview Jimmy Hart, because you know I can imagine what he's going to say about it.
As time's gone on, those who were once turned off by Kaufman's antics would go on to celebrate him for his ability to make people believe in the animosity. It was such a passion project for him, legend has it Andy didn't cash a single check that Jerry Jarrett wrote him. The legitimacy of the feud between Lawler and Kaufman was questioned for years after the fact, until those questions were finally answered in the 1999 biopic Man on the Moon.
I wouldn't have traded it for anything. To me, this was a shining moment for wrestling.
And in many ways, Jerry Lawler as Jerry Lawler was correct. Their rivalry got a ton of mainstream exposure for the slap heard around the world. 1 year after Kaufman's death and 3 after he and Lawler's iconic first match, the World Wrestling Federation, now under new management, debuted WrestleMania, a super show chock full of celebrities and outsider involvement. Coincidence? I think not. So, can you credit Andy Kaufman for bringing the very concept of sports entertainment into professional wrestling? Maybe, maybe not, but either way, I'm sure Andy would have loved the kind of heat that would bring. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.